What's up, folks? Welcome to Nino's Corner.tv. I have a very special guest today. All my guests are special, actually, but this one's really, really special. This is Ashton Forbes. And I got to tell you, Ashton, you kind of uncovered, or you didn't uncover, you really dove in and researched the Malaysia Airlines and brought it back out to the open for everyone to pay attention to on how it disappeared, the anomalies surrounding it. And there's a lot here to unpack, folks. So really pay attention to this podcast because he's gonna speak on a lot of information here and connect the dots for us. Ashton, thank you so much for joining me, man. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Nino, for having me, brother. I can't wait to talk about this with you.
Yeah, this is just, I remember the Malaysia Airlines. How long ago was that? Like about 5 years ago,
Over
10 years
10
ago?
years ago. Over 10
Okay.
years ago. And this plane's still missing today. Like they searched for this thing twice. They're searching again right now, supposedly in a spot where they say it's highly credible. I mean, if I'm right, they're going to find nothing again. And,
Okay, so
go ahead.
so let me ask you this. What's the story? What's the story they put out there for MSM?
There isn't really an official story. If you go read the official page and the official reports that have come out, that the plane just disappeared. And the reason why they can't say the plane crashed is that Boeing would be responsible if the plane crashed. And so it's all about who's going to take the hit for all of this in terms of a liability perspective. So they just say they don't know. The prevailing narrative that's out there, which is not from any official reports, is that this pilot. But if you actually look, there's no real hard evidence highlight. Like he checked out from every perspective. Everybody supported him. Officials say it wasn't something they think he could have done. And it's not clear if it was even something that can, actually be done to turn a plane off with just one person as well.
But it
So
disappeared off the radar, everything, correct?
yeah, it just completely went dark. And the more I thought about that, I'm like, how does that even make sense? Like radar is shooting beams of information like at objects and then they're bouncing back. So how exactly would you be able to turn that off from the inside of the airplane? Like they just say it's connected to this ACAR system that was turned off. So anyway, the narrative though is that this plane goes dark. And then this is the part that we didn't realize for a while was that this plane then turned back around and went back over Malaysia. And you're like, wait, what? But if you look at the flight path, it goes directly to the nearest airport that was still active, that would have been like, people would have been there. So you're thinking, oh, well, they're trying to go land. It's an emergency. But then they go fly over it. They don't land. So we need a story that connects all this information. And then it takes this weird turn back north towards the Nicobar Islands. And then they lose it supposedly on military radar. But we know this is a lie because there's at least five other radars from three different countries in range. I'll say that again. Five different radars from three different countries are still in range in the Nicobar Islands, in this Malacca Straits, Andaman Sea area outside of Thailand. So you're like, okay, wait, what? So how do we lose it? And then the only information that's made publicly available is that they're these satellite pings from a United States intelligence controlled company named Inmarsat, based out of the UK. If you look at their board of directors, there's a bunch of military, Navy admirals and generals and stuff like that on their board. And they say, "Oh, well, don't worry, guys. We heard some pings from this thing." And so they release the pings to the public. And there's all these sketchy statements about the pings are fine as long as nobody hacked them. And you're like, wait, why do you add that thing about nobody spoofing these pings or faking these pings? And then bloggers basically on the internet just like come up with some model to like based on the speed of light, like touching these satellites. Okay, we can figure out where the plane generally might be. And they say, okay, this shows the plane went in the South Indian Ocean. You're going, wait, South Indian Ocean now? You just had me over Malaysia, and now you're like, oh, it went down here in the South Indian Ocean, in the middle of nowhere. And this is what United States intelligence sources push to the media. So we search down there, search and search and search, nothing. Finally, debris washes ashore in Africa. Over a year later, a few tiny pieces of debris, including one 6 foot, 7 foot long flap from one of the wings, which may seem large, but those wings are over 100 feet long. So it's only one tiny part of one wing. The problem is it's in the wrong continent. All these arcs and satellite pings say that this plane should have crashed in the South Indian Ocean, and the currents flow to the east. We would have expected, and they did debris analysis or drift analysis before they found any debris that showed all this debris should have washed ashore in Australia. Nothing ever to date has ever washed ashore in Australia. The other big thing that people need to realize is that A plane the size a Boeing 777 is one of the biggest planes in the fleet, next to like a 747. These are the biggest planes they have. A plane that size crashing into the ocean, a huge percentage of the plane floats. The plastic, the cushions, the luggage. If this plane were to crack open, there should be thousands of pieces of debris, and there is no chance that this plane could make a smooth landing on the ocean unless somehow the middle of the Indian Ocean was like perfectly flat. But when you have these waves, like when you try to land a plane of that size, it's going to crack in half and it's going to break into a million pieces. The last thing I want people to understand is that we know 100% that the United States military knows what happened to this plane because we researched all the satellite systems. Like, how does our surveillance systems work? And it's so far more beyond advanced than what the public understands. We basically have full motion video coverage of the entire planet, even in 2014. Now they definitely do. And what they do is they have their satellites spinning around the planet like very quickly, but they're all connected to one another. So they get persistent surveillance. Even though these satellites are spinning super fast, they have enough of them that they just have permanent coverage essentially.
Wow.
They used to just have like hot spots where they like didn't have very good coverage, but now they have everything. So if there was a plane that crashes in the ocean, for at least several days, the debris is going to be scattered around a huge field and it would be visible from outer space, easily visible from outer space. But no country's ever said anything about that. Not the United States, not Russia, not China. I would think multiple countries would have seen the debris field. This is why there was most likely this weird kind of political thing happening behind the scenes where all the countries knew, they probably knew who did it and they like, they're shimmying for, political kind of control over the narrative of what was going to happen. But if it's the United States that did it, then they're going to have complete control over the narrative. So those are some of the most important facts that people need to understand, even before we look at the videos, is that there's no doubt there was a cover up at play here. A Boeing 777 can't just disappear. It can't just vanish. And we know the United States, we know not just with the satellite system that they have, but they also have an acoustic system called SOSUS, the sound surveillance system. The Navy runs it. This is the one that heard that Titan sub implode next to the Titanic. That would have heard a Boeing 777 crashing into the ocean. The acoustic detections from that, people actually showed that there were several hydrophones that also should have shown it. Actually, a Cardiff University peer-reviewed paper, I mind you, says that there was at least two hydrophones that were between 1,000, 3,000 miles away, or not even that far, kilometers. And they would have both heard this, and they didn't find any consistent detections with it. So no sound of the plane hitting the ocean. So we know that they know something, and then you add up all my FOIA requests, which I probably got like, I don't know, I've got like a stack right here. These are like just ones from, for example, right? You can see right at the top. All of them are being rejected for interest of national security, national defense, foreign policy, or covert operations. Like, there you go. I mean, I don't know what more people want on that front. So, then go ahead.
So this kind of takes me into some very different directions. One being 9/11, but I know I don't want to talk about that on FluffTube, but I'm sure you have a lot you could speak on about on that. But my mind automatically just went there, right? Also, who was on board this flight that they would have interest in downing this flight? Do we know like if there was some important people on this flight, correct?
Yeah. So now it's like, okay, well, we know there was a cover up. We haven't even looked at the videos yet. We don't even need that at this point, which is what was so crazy when I started researching the plane. Because I'm like, oh man, like there's definitely a cover up here. And I'm not even really a big conspiracy guy, actually. So I don't really have too much to say even about 9/11 or any other conspiracies that are out there. This is the one that kind of woke me up. And boy, is it a doozy. Because it's like, oh, well, this wasn't some like low rent, like hijacking of like people, the guys with box cutters. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking like this was a state sponsored operation to hide like this whatever we were doing to this plane and potentially the technology we were using on it. And it starts to get darker than that. So you start to look, okay, who's on this plane? And the people that stick out right away are the free scale semiconductor engineers and scientists who are on board this plane. 20 of them from the American company that's connected to U.S. aerospace and defense, building
Wow.
powerful microchips for the United States defense. And you're like, oh wow. And in 2014, people were in the know, like we're talking about this because they knew like this is the motive for sure. But the rest of the public didn't really understand it. Like semiconductors, what are those? What does that mean? Well, it basically means microchips. And microchips are the future of everything. It's also the future of super advanced exotic technology as well. The reason being that they're basically finding ways to manipulate gravity. And by doing that, they have to manipulate this 0 point energy field at the smallest possible scales, which microchips, that's what microchips do. They interact at the smallest possible scales. So there's 20 of these people on board the plane. If their company should have had some red flag thing trigger and say, like, this is too many people, you can't have 20 people on board this plane. The company even admitted they were very important people. And no, these weren't like the CXOs. These were like the engineers and the people that like actually
The
have the
brains.
intellectual property. Yeah, the
Right.
brains. So now you're realizing like, oh wow, well, is this like an espionage event? Is China stealing these people? Because it turns out 8 of them are Chinese nationals, and they work for the American company connected to American Aerospace and Defense. The other 12 are Malaysian, which who knows that they could be of Chinese, ancestry. Hard to say. A lot of people in Malaysia are. So maybe they're trying to defect or take these people. And then now America is preventing that from happening because those people have it. Or maybe there's cargo on board the plane or some combination of both. And then it's like, okay, why would you do what we see in the videos? Why are you going to do some super weapon on it? Why not just shoot out of the sky with a missile? Well, shoot out of the sky with a missile leaves evidence behind. You zap it out of the
And
sky and it's
they're
no
no
longer
use
there.
to whoever took this plane and took the passengers on it.
Yeah, and if you're trying to
They
save
need
the
these.
passengers,
Whoever
it's
did this took the passengers, obviously.
and that's another element to it is that and when we look at these videos here, I'll go over my theories, but I think that we have teleportation technology. And I'm not the kind of guy like I
Wow.
would only say that if I truly believed it. If I had any easier answer for you, like we have cloaking technology, I would be like, okay, we have cloaking because it's easier to accept. But I actually legitimately think we've figured out literal teleportation technology, which then broaches on the side of like, oh, okay, well, that is big enough that you would, you know, take action on a civilian airliner to prevent China from getting that. If that's what's really at stake, like teleportation technology, it's like, oh, okay, now I see why you would do a black operation on this airplane to prevent China from doing that. And then it also gives us a motive for why are you using this technology? Well, you're sending them a message. You're saying, well, not only am I, because you could just missile it out of the sky and say, "Oops, we accidentally pressed the wrong button.
Right.
Didn't mean to do that." That's going to become a whole political scene, right? The real play is you do something to the plane where nobody can ever prove it was you. And at the same time, you send a message to your adversaries that we have some shit that like you can't do anything about. And if every time you get on the plane, we want you thinking about what happened to that plane that just vanished out of nowhere. And can they do that to my plane? Because the answer is yes, they can.
This
So,
is scary, man.
right. So now it's like, okay. And that's the thing where I didn't want to believe that narrative at first. If you go back to my old interviews, I would be like, oh, they were trying to save the plane. It was on fire. There's this clear emergency event based on the flight path, the witnesses, and all this stuff. But then you get to the end of the flight path and you're like, wait, that's where these videos happen. And you're like, oh boy. And then everybody would always yell at me, there's no way America would, deploy some orbs to save the plane. And I'm like, and I kind of agree. And like, yeah. So then you get to a point where it's like, well, I mean, I'm down to believe whatever narrative people want to believe that fits with the facts. But what's happened today is people have thrown out all the evidence they don't like 20 witnesses that all corroborate a fire, lithium ion batteries in the hold that indicate a fire, 2 videos that are leaked military videos in perfect synchronization. And this is like, what do people expect? When we watch these videos here in a second, I want people to think like, when you imagine UFO disclosure, do you think it's going to come from some government agent that's going to be like, hey, so here's the truth now, finally? We've been doing this evil stuff and, scientists and stuff like that to maintain this superior. Do you really think that that's what they're going to say? And that, oh, yeah, by the way, we have this crazy advanced technology. We just didn't feel like you were deserving of it. No, that's never going to happen. There's never going to be a leak like these videos through official channels. It's the amount of liability. Like if we actually disappeared an airplane and we actually have some crazy technology that would just reshape our planet, the liability from something like that is through the roof. The only way that stuff gets leaked is that it gets leaked anonymously on the internet. And that's what I think is going to be so crazy about these videos. Go ahead.
Do these videos that you're going to show right now show the plane disappearing, or does it just show the orbs around it?
Oh, it shows everything. Here we go.
Really?
Let's get into
Oh
this.
boy.
Okay. Oh yeah, and you can see the coordinates in the bottom left, and you can see there's
And where
satellite
is this? Where are
designation.
the coordinates? Where would this be right here?
So this is the 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗹 Islands, those coordinates. There's a real witness, Catherine T, who saw the plane flying low, glowing orange with smoke coming out of the back of it. Consistent with this, she was only about 100 miles or less away from these coordinates we see. And those coordinates aren't necessarily of the plane. Those coordinates are some screen they're moving around behind the scenes.
Wow.
This is military wide area motion imagery, 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗃 footage. So this is actually a computer generated tracking system they have that pulls data from multiple systems simultaneously and then builds this like basically computer program. And then they can open these windows up, which is what we're seeing recorded here. And they can, in this case, they screen recorded the window. And so they're looking at a bigger field of view on the
Oh
behind
my
this.
gosh, it just disappeared right there, bro.
Yeah, so watch again because watch the flash. The zap here illuminates the clouds. It reflects off these clouds. This
What?
is like one of the smallest details that goes to show what we're looking at here is real. This is real three-dimensional accurate lighting. This isn't
Boom.
somebody just like put a flash on the screen using some animation. And this is the part too that also shows like we're
Oh,
not looking at like a two-dimensional picture of clouds. Like these are real three-dimensional clouds that we're looking at here as well. So this is what right away, one of those details that goes, oh boy, this would be really hard to fake. And then keep in mind, there's two videos. This is just one of the two videos.
I'm blown
And
away right now, man. That is insanity to what I
you can
just
see
saw.
this cursor. You see this cursor come on the
Yes,
screen right here?
yes,
Like
yes.
what fake videos ever had something like that? There's no fake videos with like random mouse cursors. And the cursor changes color when it goes over the clouds versus the background based on if it's like darker or lighter as well. It's wild. When it's over the clouds, it goes to full black. Right here, it's like gray in the bottom left here.
Yeah.
And you see it, it
Yep,
changes
yep,
colors.
yep,
It goes
yep.
black when it goes over the clouds right here, like right there. And then it goes to the top right screen. They turn off the recording, or no, they don't turn off the recording. They just close the window. They close the window and it's still recording. This is the original video. It's just black for like another minute. And we wondered why that was, but after we figured out that this is whammy footage and that this is a window that's like a pop-up, and then in the background they have the bigger field of view, we realized, oh, they were doing a window recording. They recorded the window. That's why the mouse cursor, when it comes on the screen, gets caught in the recording. They were recording that window, and then they went and they go and close the window, but it's still recording. So it's just recording all black.
Right.
That's like, why would you include that in your hoax video? Um, but the coordinates are probably the biggest
So
thing.
crazy.
So let me show you one other thing before I show you the second video. Is that we also found this satellite system called USA 229. This is a dual pair of satellites. This is the real time at the top of the screen. That blob is, I think, I don't know, a couple hundred miles or something like that. That's the coordinates of the video. And this is the real time we think the videos happened, right about now, maybe about here. So we have these two satellites staring right down. These are U.S. controlled, they're called NOS, Naval Ocean Surveillance
So
Satellites.
there
I
was
think they're
two
controlled by the
satellites
U.S.
right over
Navy.
the disappearance.
Right over the location. So when they're trying to say like we don't know what happened to the plane, like this is the moment where we think the videos are happening, which is like 20 minutes after they lost radar, like permanently lost radar contact.
Okay.
And I'm going, okay, well, this shows I mean, they had, what are these satellites doing if they're not tracking things? Look at these,
Right.
there's two satellites right next to each other, just chilling here. And originally, the original version of the video is 3D. It's actual literal 3D. Like here it is side by side. And when you can like combine it and you could wear like the 3D glasses and you could watch this. So people thought like, oh, I mean, we thought when we saw this, we're like, oh, it's 3D. we thought, okay, well, here's two satellites that could create a 3D video right here. Like, there you go. But then we realized it's even more complicated than that. And it's like they could be using data from these satellites and from like airplanes, like high altitude airplanes, and from drones all at the same time, feeding the computer system to produce what we see here as wide aerial surveillance. So when people say like, why is this color all the way that it is? Well, this is nighttime, and this is all just like they can manipulate any aspect of the video they want because it's computer generated, and they're just pulling data from whatever assets are in the area to be able to track objects like planes and probably boats. We're looking down at the ocean here. People don't even realize that. And
So
the
what
reason
we're
why
looking at here are these orbs that are flying around it.
yeah,
The big
that's what
question
we were
is,
talking
are
about.
they alien or are they ours?
Yeah, and I think that we've been conditioned by these, I would call it psyops, to imagine that anything we don't understand must be aliens. I think that's what they've tried to tell us. But when you really boil this down, this is just anti-gravitic technology, and we can manipulate gravity. That's what this means. Even if this was aliens, this means we can manipulate gravity. It would mean we just don't understand yet from the public perspective. But the more I started digging into these orbs and this gravity technology, because the next step was okay, now you figured out the planes, like, how does this technology exist? I realized that, okay, this is connected to a guy named 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗋. He's got these Navy patents. This might even be a Navy operation. And this technology has been out there. We've got Navy patents that explain all the technology we're seeing in these videos. And then I talked to 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗋, and he's like weirdly enthusiastic about this. And he told me when he watched this video right here, right this part, he said he knew what these orbs were doing to the plane, and he knew what was about to happen next.
Which was
Dead mind.
transport.
He knew they were about to zap the plane into a wormhole or a black hole, whatever you're going to see. This video is the one that tells us how the physics works. I can't even believe a video like this exists, like exists at all, because we can see these dark lines in front of the orbs. You can still see them right
Mm-hmm.
now if you look
Mm-hmm.
very closely. And the heat signatures of these orbs basically prove that cold fusion is real. That's look at
So they're
that orb in the
circling the
bottom
plane to
left.
create this portal.
Yeah, they're. I mean, I don't know if it's the circling part that's doing it. What you're going to see is they're going to collapse together, and that's the part that's basically increasing the electromagnetic force exponentially. Because these are basically just charged balls of lightning or like a super powerful electromagnet. And imagine if they have the same polarity and you try to jam them together, what's going to happen? Boom, you have this huge repulsion effect. But look at that heat signature in the bottom left of this orb. Like that is just wild. Let me actually slow this down so that people can see. Because this part to me is the most crazy part is when it zooms in here.
And this is a completely separate plane, or is
No,
this
this is the same
same
plane,
one?
same exact thing you just saw from a completely different angle.
Wow.
And before
Okay.
people ask it, the orbs are in sync with the other video as well. To the best that any human can figure out. There doesn't seem to be any discrepancy. Look at the orbs spinning on their axis too, like how the heat signature moves around. If
Yes.
these were fake, no one would go to that level of detail. They would
Right.
never go to that level of detail. You can see the heat signature in the belly of the plane as well, right here. You see that heat signature in the
Yep.
belly of the
I
plane?
sure do.
This is smoke coming out of the belly of the plane. That's why it looks like contrails, but it's actually just smoke wrapping around the plane on both sides of the hull. So it leaves two smoke trails. And so this is how we figured out, oh, it really is a fire. Like we saw this and compared to the witness statements, you can see the dark lines in front of the orbs, even right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
And then watch this part. They reorient and then they just collapse.
Wow.
Like this part's the craziest is that the operator clearly knows what's about to happen right here. Like you see how they're zooming out like this and they're like putting
Yes.
this camera in front of the thing, in front of the plane. They know what's about to go down. The orbs blur right here for a second. I'll show you when. Like, look at the orbs. You can see the heat signature. For a second, it goes away right here. There it goes. Goes away. And then once it comes back, they're immediately collapsing on the plane. And then the plane, you can see the tail of the plane still like, this is almost like an inversion of the tail of the
Yeah.
plane sticking out of this
That
first
is
frame.
so eerie, dude.
And people try to say it's VFX, but here's the thing. This is actually part of the original video as well, this like slow-mo part here. So this is actually this part's already slow-mo. Let me. So it gets bigger, and then it actually gets smaller again in the next frame. Right there, it gets smaller, and then it's just gone after that. So in 4 frames, it goes. I'm just gonna let this play out here. Let me change the speed. It goes, opens up, it closes, and then it's gone. So this is not an explosion event, and this is black because this is an endothermic event. If this was an explosion, this would be white
Yeah.
hot.
Right.
We can tell because we can see the engines on the plane. So this is an
So it's like a
endothermic event.
vacuum. It's like a vacuum, correct?
Yeah, it's like a black hole. And this is what 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗋𝗄 even said, where he's like, that's a black hole or whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it a wormhole, it turns out the black holes and wormholes might be the same thing. Like based on this video, they might be the same thing. And people have kind of speculated that is that maybe a black hole, maybe all black holes have a counterpart where something has to come out on the other
Right.
side.
That would make sense
And
to
if
me.
that's the case, then this is teleportation. If that's not the case, then this plane just got spaghettified into a black hole and doesn't exist on this plane of existence anymore. And I don't mean to be callous. I mean, I do want to show respect to the families. And truthfully, I'm trying to get the truth for them. I understand this is hard for people to believe, but like, look at the detail on this. You can actually even see gravitational lensing right here. So
See, to
watch right
me, I
here.
mean, why wouldn't they just guide
Right
it
there.
onto another air base or something like that if our own government needed to use it? But what would be the point of sending it through like this portal black hole to there's the big question mark right there. Where did it go?
Yeah.
Like, well,
Yeah, I
okay,
think you do it
so
to hide it, I think, right? Like the reason why you teleport a plane or annihilate it is that you want to hide what you're doing. You don't want people to either know where it's going or where it went or, whatever else the
but then
case may be.
it would attract it reappearing somewhere else, right? The satellite something
Yeah, they
would
probably did. And those videos didn't get leaked, but that's what I wonder is I imagine there was probably two videos on the other side. Wherever this plane showed up, we speculated it showed up somewhere near the Maldives. It's just speculation. We can't say for sure, but there were some people that saw the plane there in the early morning hours in the Maldives, and then they saw it fly south to Diego Garcia military base. So this is the place where everybody was saying the plane would go, and it makes sense. It's a secret military base by the United States government in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's a perfect spot to hide a big giant plane. So I think the plane got there. Now I can't say because I don't have two videos on the other side how it got there, but either this plane teleported somewhere else. Maybe there was like some weird time effect where like it came out like a few hours in the future. I don't think it's going to come out like manifest, like whatever that show is, like 10 years in the future. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it would have already happened if it was going to do that. But I keep the door open to it coming out like, plane being gone for like a couple hours and then all of a sudden appearing out. Yeah, I think it's possible. And then, what happened after that? Well, if you look at that debris we spoke about earlier in Africa, it
you think
doesn't
that
make
could have
any
been
sense.
placed there? It would just could have been placed there to make it more to try to make it believable that it crashed into the
I
ocean.
actually don't think it was placed there. I
Okay.
think that it fell into the water or was put in the water at Diego Garcia. Or either that plane was landing at Diego Garcia and it was falling apart because it was on fire and it was a Boeing plane. And some pieces fell into the water, like the engine cowling, which is just like the outside of the engine, fell into the water there. And if you look at the ocean currents, it's like a perfect match. Diego Garcia compared to where all that debris was found in Africa, perfect match. Like that actually makes sense that they would have found that debris in that period of time compared to the South
I've
Indian
I've
Ocean where it doesn't make any sense.
I've never seen footage like that in my life. That's that I'm just
Nobody
thrown back.
has, right?
I don't even know what to make of. That's just unbelievable what I just witnessed right there. And my audience, I'm pretty sure they feel the same way.
Well, that's why a lot of people naturally just go, that can't be real. They just think, well, it has to be fake. And I understand that, but we should be brave enough to say, what if that is real? And how would we confirm that? We shouldn't just be dependent upon the authority to tell us, because a lot of people will say, well, what's the chain of custody? If that's real, there's never gonna be an official chain of custody for that. That's the
No.
kind of thing that like that's so far beyond what anyone was expecting. Like if we've got that, and it turns out, by the way, that those balls of plasma being cold fusion potentially means that we would have covered up cold fusion technology that was like this big thing in 1989 where like turns out the DOE probably just like made that all go away because those balls are plasma balls but they're not white hot. Those were not white hot balls of
Right.
plasma. They were like blue and green, like basically the same color as the plane, which means that's very cold. That's cold plasma, which is counter what everyone thinks right now. And cold plasma might be the secret to free energy, to tapping into the energy that's all around us. So the government could be hiding from us anti gravity. They could be hiding from us these dark operations that they're doing. They could be hiding from us that cold fusion was real, and they could be hiding free energy from us just from this one video that we saw. So the implications are obviously through the roof, and everyone goes, well, that can't be real because you think of like what that really means. It means like everything's kind of fake, everything's a lie. Academia has no clue if academia hasn't figured this out, but like military contractors have figured all this science out behind the scenes. It means that like our planet, there might be something really dark going on here,
Ooh.
like that they're afraid
And
of
this
even
is
letting
probably
us have.
very ancient technology that's been around for a very long time, in my opinion, because obviously orbs have been seen since the beginning of time in pictographs and paintings and on Egyptian walls and in caves. I mean, it's been around for a very, very long time. It just makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Let's try to let's try if we can here segue into this Tesla explosion that happened in front of Trump Tower. Now that guy said he was not under duress, but he left an obvious ISO prep that he was probably being followed. And I think he was really trying to blow the whistle on something, but it got intercepted. And I think another psyop was delivered within his mission of trying to blow the whistle. Do you think there's connections here? Do you think there's a connection here with the Malaysia flight and him knowing this about this type of technology, in which they're like, we're not going to let you do that, and something happened there?
Man, everybody asked me that, and I think that's why I had such high demand because the crossover was huge. And this email that Sean Ryan received was the mindset was so contrary to what the FBI was trying to paint to people. And in half the letter is this guy whistleblowing on anti-gravitic drones and that China and the U.S. are in some kind of technology, race or war to figure out shadow war over who can develop this technology
Would
faster.
that be considered anti-gravitic drones, what we just saw over that plane?
Oh, 100%. And that's why looking at those videos, plasma itself, according to Ken Shoulders in the late 80s, has anti-gravitic properties because you're manipulating the energy all around us. The ether, if you want to think of it as that. The ether, the 0 point energy field. The plasma itself manipulates that energy density. And so you can add more energy in there. You can create this ball of lightning that's moving around. So often you have these same phenomenon come together. Anti-gravity,
And you can't
free
fight
energy.
against that, not with our technology. And if someone like China has this
Yeah,
technology,
there's no.
we're done. It's donezo. It's game over.
It's probably game over for the whole planet, frankly. And that's the big scary part is that this kind of technology and that's why I found what he said credible when most people were probably just going, no, he's a crazy person saying all this stuff. He also says that he has UAP USAP access. And Sean Ryan didn't even know what that meant when he was talking about this letter. I mean, that is UFO unacknowledged special access programs. He's
So he
saying,
had the
and this
access to the
this guy was
UFO.
confirmed Green Beret, confirmed Special Forces. They confirmed that he was just aligned with some drone project back in November, just a few months ago, as well. So he's in the right position. He has all the right credentials to, be a guy that would be a whistleblower. And everything about his death is extremely suspicious. I mean, the whole explosion in front of Trump Tower is very symbolic. We're using the
That's what I said
Cybertruck.
from the get-go, man.
I mean, how can you
Especially
not
using a
see it?
Tesla and then in front of Trump Tower, it's like those two guys are teaming up right now. It's like
All
a
the
warning.
media is sitting there going like, President Elon, blah blah blah, crap, right? Like, of
Yeah.
course, it looks like a big narrative in terms of that happening. So, I was just talking. Oh crap, I forgot his name right off the top of my head. But there's people. Oh, Matt Lardo, I think is his. I'm probably butchering his last name.
I do it all the
Um,
time. Don't worry.
Yeah. So anyway, there's researchers that have been looking into it on X, and they spoke to his wife just the other day, and turns out that whole story about the DNA not matching his kid, that was all fake. It didn't
Oof.
match. Like, and she said they had a happy marriage as well. Like this is
Okay,
like
so
torn them apart.
another psyop that I thought they were doing here is trying to basically make the vets untrustworthy to lead to another psyop in which he had a right wing manifesto, make him look unbalanced, have
Yeah.
PTSD, and which I suffer from all those beautiful things. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think they're playing that card for future terror events in order to say, oh, see the vets, they're just so imbalanced, they're crazy. I don't know. I think that's a part of this.
I mean, it was interesting to watch Sean Ryan circle the wagons after that because the debunkers came at him hard and said he faked the email because it was contrary to what the FBI was pushing out there. And the FBI story makes no sense. Like they somehow hacked this guy's phone in a few hours that was destroyed in this explosion and pulled off this message from his, notepad or something that's like this unhinged
So do
right-wing
you think they
rant.
used the Sean Ryan show to put out misinformation?
No, no, I think that Sean Ryan was putting out the real information that was confirmed that had come from this guy that paints a completely different perspective of his mental state. And
Got you.
that was huge. And so then because Sean Ryan did that, everybody was attacking Sean Ryan because they're going with,
Right.
well, the FBI is saying this, and that goes against what you're putting
Right, but
out there.
Sean Ryan was doing his job by just putting it out there. I mean, he was just getting the information and putting it out there. Very
But did you
brave on
see
his
the
part.
debunk, like the one fat guy going, "Oh, I'm an expert, and this is all fake, and this is why the email is completely fake."
Oh, they
And
attacked Sean. They went
oh
after
yeah,
Sean like gangbusters, man. Everybody.
so that's why when he circled the wagons, it was interesting to watch. I was on the space, had like 30,000 people on it. And he basically he brought up all his like lawyer and all his like FBI people that are, legit and was like, just had them read off their credentials and basically be like, nope, Sean's legit, blah, blah. And then when the FBI came out and said, yes, this definitely came from the guy, a lot of people say, oh, well, why you're believing the FBI now? And then I think that this is when people take it too far, where it's like, no, I'm not believing the FBI. The FBI is admitting that this is real. It goes against their narrative, but there's just too much evidence they can't deny it anymore at that point. That's how I look at that perspective. And it's not that I like fully trust Sean Ryan or anything like that. I mean, I think he's a good guy. But I think that we have to accept that email, they have forensic analysis that proves it comes from his device. So it's either him or
Uh,
somebody else using his device that
I'll say
information.
that I know Sean Ryan personally, and he's a friend of mine, and I'll say that I like the guy. I think and I'm a good judge of
I think he's,
character, and he's a salt of the earth type of guy, and that's I can
yeah,
only just speak on his character. He's a really good dude that I know, and so that's why I just all of this that's coming out, this overload of information that's coming out right
hmm
now, I just think it's all related. It's all related. There's a massive cover up. Two
yeah,
forces are fighting right now. I've always said this is a spiritual war at the core, and I think what's coming is going to be, in my opinion, with this UAP technology, which is already there. It's who's controlling it, man. Whether it's China or aliens. Obviously, it's it's obviously whether if it's from aliens, it's been here for the longest time. But if China has it and they're just flying over our country, like flexing their technology, then we're in trouble, man.
100%. Yeah, and I want to say I respect Sean Ryan too, and I supported him 100% on this thing, even while people were saying, "No, this got debunked by this guy." I was like, "Nah,
Yeah.
man, I don't know. Sean Ryan's like a straight up guy. He's not gonna
You
come
can't
up
you
with some
can't shoot the
fake
messenger,
story.
man.
No way." And I get why, like, there's this controversy of whether or not why he wants to talk to me or not talk to me or whatever. But I get it. Sean Ryan wants to talk to people who are like
Have you tried to
military,
reach out to him?
ex-military.
Have you tried to?
Yeah, like behind the scenes, I actually sent him a message the other day. But I get it. Like what I'm putting out there is it's pretty out there, man. It's hard for people to like wrap their brains around. And truthfully, it hurts national security. It really does. Because what you just said about what's the real implications of this is that if we have this technology, regardless if it comes from aliens or wherever it comes from, this is a big issue and a political issue. And I want America to have this technology. I don't really want China to have it or anybody else to have it because the moment two warring factions get this technology, it's game over.
Right.
And we're not talking about shooting millions, thousands of nukes into the sky. We're talking one bomb that takes out the whole planet just like that, just instantaneously gone. And that's the thing that scares me about this in terms of what's the whole narrative. I think this is where it comes together, my opinion. I've thought about this a lot because I do think there's some connection, and I think that this technology is ready to come out, and I think they can't really hide it for much longer because the physics is getting found out and people like normal people like me are starting to figure it out. People like you are starting to like really question like what's the energy source on a UFO? Like, wait, if these UFOs are real, like what's flying this thing? I don't see any SpaceX rockets there. How is it just levitating
No
like that?
propulsion system, nothing. It's
And
just
smart people are going, wait, is there some sort of free energy that we don't know about? And we're like, oh, quantum mechanics says there's this 0 point energy. So people are starting to figure it out. So it's going to come out. China has probably already figured out that it's real as well, and they're working on it. And we're at the point now where it's like once China does one of these displays of power, people are going to start freaking out saying it's aliens. but the government's going to know it's not aliens. They're going to say, they're going to not be able to say what it is. So you can imagine the New Jersey drone situation could be some type of situation like that, where China's just flexing, showing people what they have. And it's really then a question of which country is going to be the one that's going to spill the beans on this to the people first. Like, hey, so it turns out, guys, we're basically just cavemen. We've been messing around with rockets, and we could be having this like 0 point energy technology and living like the Jetsons or like Star Trek or something, you know?
So let me ask you this then. Do you think this has anything to do with the balloon, the Chinese balloon that was flying over the states and nothing happened? Do you think maybe they were mapping things out so that these drones can fly so freely?
Yeah, I think the balloon was a distraction. I think that the real reveal was the other objects they shot down right afterwards that they didn't want to show the videos of, and there was rumors that it wasn't just balloons that they shot down, and they couldn't figure out what it was, and then they like said they were going to recover it, and then they said, "Oh, we couldn't recover it. Don't worry about it. Like we
Yeah.
didn't find anything." That was the bigger reveal, and I think that I have been speculating for several years, even before I started doing all this podcasting stuff, that they had been using drones to as code for UFOs, and they started using that, and that's where I started suspecting that maybe we've developed some drones based on anti-gravity technology that you don't even have to have a person inside of it, where you don't need a flying saucer. And then you start to think about it, it's like, yeah, the person inside is just a liability. Why have that at all?
How
I
could
just
they
want the
handle that kind of
anti-gravity
G
drone.
force anyway? There's kind of like right angle turns that I just don't,
Yes.
I think maybe they're flown with through conscious thought. I don't know.
Could
I
be.
mean,
A lot of people think that. It's an interesting, I would need to see someone doing it to like really be like 100% believer, but
maybe
it's
they're in
not
another
outside the realm of physics.
dimension. I mean, shit.
And the other thing too is when you watch the MH370 videos, the other huge part is like watching them spin around the plane. It's very similar to the design concepts for an Alcubierre warp drive. The idea of the warp drive is you'd have this ring around the plane in the middle, and then the ring would be what warps space and time. But instead, we have an airplane in the middle, and we have the orbs are presenting as the ring, and they're not connected to the plane. And we look at it from that perspective, you're like, oh wow, like this is like really advanced. Like someone thought through like the Miguel
Well,
Alcubierre
they
warp
could
drive
they
stuff.
yeah they made the teleportation happen. I mean, they were making this.
Salvatore Pais says they filling the air with like non-ionizing radiation is the way he describes it. I like to listen to the Navy experts and engineers that basically are building this stuff and can't talk about it. And basically there's a phase singularity. So you think of the wormhole that's happening. There's a black hole. It's making a little black hole, and what's happening is you're ripping through the fabric of reality, but only for a split second, because then reality immediately closes back up again, and the energy kind of just comes right back in. So you
But it would
imagine
have
like
to
you're
have coordinates on the other side. That's what trips me out. Is like it's not just going into some mindless hole.
yeah. So this is why they call me four orbs, because the whole thought has been, well, what if they're using quantum entanglement? I mean, we're already out in the woo just saying we can teleport something, but even hypothetically, how would that work? Well, how does it work in the quantum realm? We know quantum teleportation is real. We call it quantum entanglement. So what if they entangled three orbs over here to one orb anywhere else? And maybe it is limited. Like maybe you don't just teleport anywhere you want. Maybe there's a steering wheel. So maybe this fourth orb, you put this fourth orb somewhere, and then you converge the three orbs like we saw in that video, and then now the plane instantly, or maybe there's a weird time dilation effect where it's like, okay, all of a sudden 2 hours later you appear over here. I don't know. It's hard to say because we're just judging based
So
on
they're
what we've seen
connected
through
to that
videos,
fourth orb.
and that's why they call me Four Orbs, which is it is kind of weird that that's my last name, Forbes. But that's one theory. The other theory is like it could just be like a turkey baster, where like it depends on how much energy you put in. Where if like you squeeze it on one side, it's just going to depend on how far it goes in that direction. I don't really know. Honestly, it's hard to say. And people also ask me like, well, what happened to the passengers? The truth would be that I think the smoke from the fire, if that really was a fire on board that plane, probably took out basically everybody except for the pilots, and then maybe some of the crew. And I doubt that people unfortunately survived. But if they did, they're
Okay, so then
probably
that would
on
mean
gig
they were
mercy.
more concerned about the evidence being left behind.
That's what I'm thinking, but again, like the only people who can answer a lot of these motive questions are the US government themselves. And we know they're hiding the truth about this plane. So if people really want to press, they should be pressing, people like Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines. People that were connected to administration when it happened, like James Clapper, John Brennan. These people are 100%. They're in the know. They would know exactly what we did to this plane. So it's crazy too that when you look at these people, like they're good liars, a lot of them, because like they know dark stuff that we did like this, and they just never let it crack and get revealed to the public. It goes to show that these people are better liars than I even expected. That's why I don't mind when people clever, because these
Yeah.
people have done some evil stuff, or they're in the know on some evil stuff that they're not revealing. So
Where do you think this leads us? For the past 5 years, even longer than that, I've known about this, but for the past 5 years on my show, I've been talking about whistleblowers that have come out saying that they're going to pull this alien card and don't believe it. It's all deception.
yeah.
That these are they're not from other planets. They're interdimensional. These entities are from other dimensions, which would make sense with teleportation.
Hmm.
But what's your thoughts on this? I mean, this seems to all be coming out right now, right on time.
Yeah.
Um, any thoughts on that?
I think it was always going to come out at some point. I don't think there's any kind of timeline on when it's actually going to happen. Although I do think the government has like an awareness program that they're trying to bring us up to speed on. I think the interdimensional thing is actually a psyop too. If you really, if my true opinion is, and I don't care where they come from. Whatever. If there's aliens, there's a lot of different options, including interdimensional, other planets, from under the ocean. They could be us. We could literally be aliens that were stranded here. There could be AI, there could be conscious plasma. The amount of options is like through the
Just
roof. Angels,
endless.
demons, cryptids. So for me, it's like I had to, you know what, let other people figure that out. I don't know. I'm more of
Well,
like the
well,
tech
that
guy.
being said, you saying let other people figure that out. There's a lot of personalities coming forward saying there's going to be
Yeah.
disclosure. Do we trust them?
I don't trust any of them. The one that I align with the most, just on my own research, is Stephen Greer. A lot of people ask me about him. I mean, I like him because he's pushing 0 point energy. I think that the Lost Century should basically be like mandatory watching for people if you haven't watched that documentary. I don't think it ever mentions aliens at all. Maybe once or twice in there, but mostly just explaining free energy, going all the way back to Tesla and some of these scientists and engineers that Greer did interviews with. And a lot of my research either comes from people like Tim Ventura, shout out to him, or Stephen Greer that interviewed a lot of these Black Project engineers. Those are the people that people should have been talking to, not like, no offense to the military or thing. I respect our veterans, but having like talking to a military whistleblower that like saw something weird. Okay, great. That's a cool story. But the people you want to be talking to are like, who's the engineer that figured out like the 0 point energy device, or like who's the one that figured out if you take these orbs and zap them, converge them together, it'll like zap a plane away. Like, who's that person? Because that person exists out there, and they are like usually a little more socially awkward. They generally don't do podcast interviews and stuff like that, but sometimes they do, and sometimes they speak pretty openly. So Stephen Greer did a lot of those interviews. Check out his disclosure archive. When he starts talking about the CE5 stuff and all that, I'm not really quite on board with that. And I think that he's kind of using some of this as a marketing with respect to the whistleblowers. But I look optimistically. If there are whistleblowers coming out, like he said, in the next 72 hours, great. I've got nothing against it. I think everybody should
Well,
do
I
whatever they
think
want.
you're pretty profound. I think you're pretty big with what you're showing, the evidence that you're showing here to
Mhm.
my audience at least, Ashton. Have you gone on a lot of shows?
Yeah, I've got on quite a lot. I've done over like I think 100 podcast appearances, and I've only just done that to like I wanted to get this into the zeitgeist so that people understood this is real, this is out there. People out there think the videos are fake and debunked. I understand that. Like what's going to happen over time is people are going to slowly start to realize this stuff's real. And as more stuff like the Cybertruck bombing happened, people are going to see that there is these connections like you were putting together earlier on this show here, between all of this. And it's going to corroborate that those videos are real, that technology is real. We're going to see that kind of endothermic event, that cold zap. We'll see stuff like that again that will prove that those videos are real in the future. There are a few that people that haven't, wanted me on, or there's something they don't say publicly what it is, but like Joe Rogan relatively famously said that like Jeremy Corbell told him that the videos were fake and not to like basically have me on, which actually did lead to Joe canceling an interview I had with him. I think that interview with Joe Rogan will happen one day when there's more corroborating stuff where people look back at these videos and they're going, maybe those debunks weren't as solid as they thought. And like maybe this really is something that the US government could pull off. Um, and Let's see, what was the last person? But I have been on people like Candace Owens, who was surprising because I like her a lot. I think she's extremely intelligent. I don't agree with all of her positions, but I don't think people have to. And I expected her to be not on board with this idea of like advanced technology. And it turns out when I first met her, she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally on board with the idea of like the government hiding advanced
Yeah,
technology
of
from
course.
us." And so that was a great conversation. People should definitely check out. And the Hodge twins as well was a great conversation about the physics and the science that people should check
And
out
you
if
were
they
able
want
to
to.
show these videos on there as well?
Yeah, on but not as much actually. I wanted like it would be nice if Owens showed it a couple times because it's like a 3 hour interview and the videos are only there for like a couple
Right.
minutes. So I tell people go to my YouTube channel. Like I've uploaded them there. If somebody made these videos, why have they like the reason why I make
Right,
money
right.
off those videos is I want somebody like why people are telling me someone made these videos. So okay, well I guess I'm gonna make money from somebody else's work if that's the case. But and that's just another reason why it's like okay. I'm not trying to become rich or famous from this. You know, that's not the goal. I have a real job that actually I do, a 9 to 5 for the most part. I'm kind of on lunch right now. So with respect to this, like this is just something that I thought was important, that's important to me. And I looked at the UFO community and I realized there's a lot of people out there trying to push this alien narrative. Like, oh, it's aliens and whatever. If we see something that we can't understand, it's alien technology.
But that doesn't mean, yeah, but I'm just saying it's probably most likely reverse engineered.
That's what my original thought was as well. And the more I've learned, the less certain I am. The more
Really?
I've learned, it could be even a situation where we've been using the alien narrative to cover up that we've figured this out, even going all the way back to the 40s. And people say,
Interesting.
okay, well, what about the Foo Fighters in earlier? Maybe I don't.
The
The crazy
crash at
part is that
Roswell, I mean,
yeah, the Nazis even before that. The Nazis were supposedly experimenting. This is supposedly part of the reason why we took their scientists from Project Paperclip. One of those scientists was Freiwart Winterberg. Turns out he was looking at fusion, potentially cold fusion, believed in the ether.
I
So
heard
you look at
all
some of
this
these guys.
stuff leads to Antarctica as well.
It could. I think the Antarctica thing, I have a different view on it, which is that what if they've got some very powerful gravity wave detector there? And they can't admit it because people don't really think we can make gravity waves. And so if you were like, oh, you've got some super advanced gravity wave thing there, like why do you have that? Oh, well, because it turns out all the primitives are messing around in the electromagnetic spectrum. And we like, all the advanced races are working with gravity waves and manipulating gravity through the ether. And we're just dumb apes that think that space is empty. It's an empty vacuum. There's nothing in it. So this is the part where, you were asking too about like some of the community where there's a lot of the community that for some reason doesn't seem interested in the science aspect of it. But for me, that's what I've always loved is like, how do I make a warp drive? I want to see the stuff that you can do in Star Trek. And it's not that I don't want to diminish the alien aspect. I think it's interesting. I'm curious about it. But for me, what would really change the whole world on an actual technological level is if we have like free energy or warp drives and wormholes. Like we don't need airplanes anymore. We don't need to do
Yeah,
any
we just go to
fossil
a
fuels.
teleportation station and we just go
Yeah.
wherever we
Just
want.
have
I
a
mean,
portal. Just go through your portal and appear wherever you
yeah.
want, right?
And it's not even, maybe not even going to another place on this planet. You may go somewhere else, and go visit some other dimensional beings and come back. I mean, this could open up an infinite amount of possibilities that it just would blow anybody's mind, right?
Yeah.
Like our reality would just shatter. Like it's just insane what this could present.
Yeah, and that's part of it as well, is I think some people's minds literally will shatter. Like you can't discount that. The more I thought about it, is like there's
Religion,
actually a significant percentage. Uh,
religion, right there. First thing to go, boom.
it's funny. I have a different take on that as well. Is that I think it's those people will adapt easily. They'll be like, oh, okay, well, God created aliens, God created all this technology. Boom, problem solved. To me, it's the people that trust the authority that will
Mm,
they're gonna have the psychological break. The people that
interesting.
go the people that are in their car driving alone, right?
Oh, you're right.
Those are the people
Yeah.
that like they trust the authority so much that now that they learn that the authority has been lying to them, that academia, the media, and the government have all just been lying to them for their whole lives, those people are gonna break down. Like, and you learn that the government does
because
use
they have faith in
conspiracy
their
theories.
institution, into the government, right? So,
The same kind of people that yell at you and go, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist,"
right,
because you believe that they
yeah.
use it as a pejorative to try to put you. Those people are going to have a psychological break from this because it goes to show that, like, yes, the government is capable of massive cover-ups, and they're capable of shaping your perception of events. Just like how everybody, if you were to ask them, think, "Well, no, MH370 crashed and they found debris." Like it's just like a robot programming, and they're doing it to us on a level that we don't even really understand how invasive and subversive that it really is.
Ashton, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you, man. This was a killer podcast. I'm going to put this out. I'm going to go for it and stay with me for a second. All right. Oh, where do people find you?
Yeah, find me on X primarily at JustXAshton and on Twitter or on YouTube as well. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram and now on Red Note, the Chinese application. I joined that as well. All Just X Ashton. Follow me on those apps, guys.
Just X Ashton,
Yep.
like the letter X. Okay. Thank you. Stay with me real quick.